Hey my friends, Mike Amori. Here is your solutions video to the 38 puzzles given to the 4 p.m. class. I am going to go very quickly because I have 38 of these to do and I'm going to try to do it in one video. Your job is to pause the video during the opening. For example, here, pause your video. Make sure this position is set up. Try to solve it or remember the solution. And then watch the answer and then it's yours. Okay? All right. First move. Here's the solution. King h6. Attacking the pawn. Black has to put the king on h8. We move our g pawn one square. They have to go back to g8. And now the question was move the h pawn 1 or 2. This exact position you may never have again, but the value here is knowing how to use these tempos with the pawns. It's important that you play h3, not h4. If you're really ambitious, play h4 and you'll see that this game is a draw. But after h3, we're going to get a position. All of Black's moves are forced. They have to keep going back and forth. We're going to get a position like this where it's our turn with the kings in opposition. We play g6. That breakthrough wins. If the pawn takes, do not take with the king and leave yourself with a rook pawn. You should take with the pawn and then execute a squeeze. Going back, the only other move they could have played is g8. That's after g6. They can play g8. And then we just play g7. The king comes away. And even I can win with 2 extra pawns. Number 2, set this up on your board. The key to this position was being able to force the following setup. Way down here. This black pawn is one move away from queening. We play the move king g3. And if they promote to anything other than the knight, we just mate them here on f2. So they have to promote to a knight. We just move our king. And then wherever the knight moves, we have a simple win. Correct? Okay, now how to get there. Let's go back. And there's the first move, okay? You actually take your king and block your queen. Let's go back. Sorry about that. You block your queen so there's no stalemate. The king comes out, and then you move your king again, check. So you're actually stealing 2 moves away from black. Wherever they go, you just play a series of checks. And again, I'm going quickly. You pause your video anytime you want. And this is a setup that I happen to know works every time, so I go for it. And it's right here. You guys see it? King g3. Done. Number 3, this was a really nice position. Very cool. In the game, f4 was played, check. And I believe on the blog I put the king here on e4. Black to play and win. Again, I'm going to start going quickly. I'm not walking all the way through these solutions. Rook d6 was the winning move. You can work out what happens if rook takes pawn. You just play king e6 and there's a mating threat. You're going to be up a rook. And then you also have to work out, let's go back, how to play this king and pawn ending, which is completely winning, but it takes a little technique. That's your solution. Number 4, you were asked, did it matter if white takes this pawn here with the king or with the pawn? It matters big time. If you take with the king, the game is a draw. That's the solution. If you take with the pawn, you win. How? That you have to do yourself. So after this term is over, if you've watched this solution video and you still don't understand the answers, you are to contact me. I'm not going to give every single possibility away. That means you guys aren't doing any work for yourself. But that game, trust me, this one here is over. White should win. This is black to play. Black found a really, really nice idea. What they want to do is they want to get this rook in front of their pawn here, or actually it's behind their pawn because this pawn is trying to queen, so that the white rook would not take it. And you'd had to find the move rook to b4, which is just a beautiful move. The rook cannot take your pawn because you have a discovered check winning the rook. And after rook to b4, if the king tries to make a run for your pawns, you simply play king b3. your next move is going to be rook here. So white might as well give up the rook as early as possible. King takes, and the problem is, as you start to re-centralize your king, you have this nice check on b7, keeping a huge checking distance, and there's no way for white to hold this position. You have enough time to get your king in. They can't touch your pawns without making a few trades. You have a theoretically winning position. You guys see it? One more time. That's the winning move. That's what it looked like from the beginning. Rook to b4. Number 6, we were black. Here you have a position where bishops of opposite color, you need to eliminate this pawn and get your king over to the queening square, which is the wrong color of the bishop. And you do that by playing king f7. White cannot push the pawn. You just take it with the bishop, and you have time to get back to this very important diagonal. And if they try something like this, we simply walk our king over. There's no way for them to make progress. If they play g6, you can actually take it, because, again, you have time to get back, and if the king takes you, now you're inside the square of this pawn. This is a theoretical draw. Let's go back to king e7. They could play a6, just king d8. And remember that after a7, king c7, you don't have to worry about them queening, because you have time to take it. And this pawn actually has 2 steps before it gets to g8. So it's not going to work. If they play g6, just king b7. g7, cover the new queening square, king h7, a8, queen, take it, draw. Okay? Okay, this was black to play, and pretty simple. You just needed to run the pawn, and it wins. If they play something like, they have a couple of options. They can take a pawn here, and then you just make a queen and d5, and you put the queen behind. And positions like this, where you're not talking about a bishop pawn or a rook pawn, are always a win. You just do the magic V. We've talked about that in class. This is a win. There are a couple of other things white can try. I don't think moving this pawn does any good. On king c6, you make the queen anyway, and on c7, just queen b1, and game is over. You can work this out for yourself, how to win from here, but there's no way that white can hold this position. So it looked kind of easy, right? The only reason I showed it was one of my students had something similar to this. Like I told you, some of these positions were from other games. So here's a2, the winning move, but I had someone once in a similar position take the pawn, thinking, let's get rid of white's pawn first, and their pawn's going to be too far away to queen. Do you guys know anything about this position? You should. This is an absolute draw. This is a bishop pawn with the king too far away. Don't fall for that, okay? Nice position. Here, white has a saving resource. That's what you were asked to find, and it's king g6. And it looks almost impossible that white could hold this pawn. Well, if black goes straight out for the queen, you just bring your king to f5. And if they go to a3, now we can't get inside the box, the square of that pawn, but we do have king e6. And it turns out they can't stop you from queening. If they make a straight run, just pawn c7. And, you know, if king here, you play king here. And if they queen, you queen. It's a draw. So after king g6, there are a couple of other things that black can try. They can go for your pawn right away. You play the same move, king f5. And really interesting stuff. If the pawn runs, then you have to be very, very clever and find the move king e5, which is a double attack. You're threatening to get inside the square of this pawn, or coming here, escorting this pawn home. This is the key variation to know. What a cool position. If the pawn runs, you have to play king d6. Let me back this up. And if the king takes your pawn, you simply play king to d4. and white cannot stop you, or black can't stop you from getting to the queening square. Dead draw. Okay, number 9. This is a draw for black. Solution is skewer the king. King moves. Take the queen. King takes. You need to know black's only move to draw. D5. You have to give up the pawn one rank further. If they come for your pawn, king c7, they snap it, take opposition, draw. And again, as you're setting up these positions, if you have questions about anything from here, you contact me and I'd be happy to help you out. Okay? All right, let's go to the next game. Okay, here we are white down 2 pawns. You were asked to make a draw. This is a theoretical draw. With your bishop out here, there's really no room for black's king to get in here, especially after the move that draws, bishop to g2. Position is a draw. You can play around with this. If black pushes straight away, just sack the bishop for the 2 pawns. Game is a draw. After bishop g2, they can go to the dark squares. You just sit on the light squares, and you just play back and forth all day long with this bishop. Dead draw. And if the king ever stops you from coming here, you just go this way. No way black makes progress, okay? The only other thing they can try, they make a run for it with the king. You just tempo with your bishop. You must stay on this pawn so that if the king ever goes too far, you just take it off. And king d4, just bishop to g2. They can move their bishop. You can move yours. If they go king e5, you just repeat the position. Very cool draw. Okay, here white was asked, what square should you use to get out of check? Or show me the one that loses, and it was the move king e5. If you played king e5, you're going to get mated, because after king c6, pawn f6 is mate. It's really embarrassing. So rook c1 check, just king d7, and you're cooked. Okay, that was the solution to number 11. Number 12, a lot of different ways to win. You can try pawn e6. There's also a couple of ways to stalemate, or you could mess this up. But if king d8, just be careful with the check. You don't want to really have that king on your pawn like that, where you might not be able to save it. Just back the king up, not to c5. I'm sorry, to e5. Just move the king to e5, and there really is not anything. There's nothing that black can do here. If they take with the pawn, you take with the king, and you're on the critical square. If they move the king, you just give a little check. King d8, and this is really the main concept I wanted to show you, is this totally boxed in king. King e8. Just walk your king around and watch how simple this is to win. King f7, king c5, king e8, and that's it. You just walk your way in. There's more than one way to win that. I just wanted to make sure you guys could at least find one. Take the pawn and it's over, okay? Okay, here I think I asked, can black save this position even with their bishop attacked? So we are playing black to play and draw. The key move is to push that pawn. Again, opposite colored bishops. It's amazing what goes on in these positions. So they have no choice. They have to stop you from queening, and now you retreat your bishop. You can't give the bishop up. You do only for that pawn, and once they move the pawn, you have to sack the bishop. King takes, and do you remember how to draw this position? Just make a queen. They have to take. King f7, they can't save the pawn. I don't remember where I found this one, but it was from a real game, actually. And this was what's white's winning plan. And it was to find the move bishop to d7, which is kind of rude. The black king can never get out. The black knight is trapped. And you just simply walk your king up and take that knight and win the game quite easily. Okay? I don't think I have to show any more from here. Very good. Here, I am not spending a lot of time on this one. There is only one move that wins. There are probably 6 or 7 variations to go through. I just want to show you one that draws. The winning move was king to f2, and you just have to keep maneuvering your king back and forth and take these pawns at the appropriate time. If you were to take the G pawn right away, then after king e4, once you move your king over, what do you do if black queens? And that looks like an absolute crazy move. The king or rook can take your queen. If the king takes, we just put the king on d3. And believe it or not, this is a draw. Your king cannot come closer. If he goes away, we come to d2. The rook's only other move is king a1, and now just king c3. And you'll see the white king can still not make, or still can't make progress. And what does white do? You're going to play king b2 next move and queen. If they play king here, just don't, a rook there, just don't do that, because now you lose. Don't do that. Just go back to this position and you have a draw. Okay? After king f2, I'll just give you one line. If you were to play, well, it's black's move. Let's say they play king e5 here. Now if you take the pawn on e2, you just have to be very careful. There's so many different things that they can do. Let's say they came here to f4. If they play king to f4, now after king f2, there isn't enough time for black to connect to their piece. If they come here, we simply take the rook, take the pawn with the rook. You have to play around with this, guys, but the key is not to take. Let's go back to the original position here. Let's see if I can do this with some of these buttons. Yeah, look at that. Just don't take the G pawn. It's a trap because of this line, okay? Here, and queen. So kind of remember that, you know. I'll tell you what, let's flip that. You're black. Black to play and draw. Just promote. Pretty cool position. Okay? Good. I think you guys saw this, and it said, what did you think of queen takes a6? And that is not a good move because of this surprising rook sack. Check. And then after king takes h3, we have the amazing queen e6 check, which picks up the queen. They have to take, otherwise they lose. What is that? Stalemate. Very cool position. So as I mentioned, stalemates really don't belong in all endgame positions, but they occur mostly in these kinds of endgames. This happened to be from a middle game, but I thought it was kind of appropriate and I threw it in there. Okay? All right. Nice. Okay. Some of these weren't that hard. White to play. Are we in trouble? Absolutely not. Rook b3. You're checking the knight and the rook. What to do? If rook takes, stalemate. If the rook goes away, you simply take the knight. Check. If the king takes, it's a draw. If the king goes away, you have a rook pawn. Just put your rook on c1, and there's no way they can bother your king. Very cool move. Okay, this one required a little bit of technique. Here, with bishop to g2, it's black's move. So black naturally has to stay on this diagonal. So on bishop to g4, we go bishop to b7. Bishop b7, for the moment, we're just going to come here and kick this bishop away. So they know that. So they come to h3. I mean, we probably could have went to b7 right away. But anyway, I just want to share with you the main winning idea. It's not important. Now we offer the bishop trade. Can they trade? Absolutely not. They have to be able to stop this pawn when you move the bishop out. So what to do? They cannot play bishop takes c8. So they play bishop f1. Now we bring our bishop out. They play bishop to a6. And now all we have to do is get our bishop here, this bishop here, as long as the king is not on this square. So what do? We play bishop to e4. Remember, this bishop cannot move because you'll take it here, you'll take it here, and you'll queen if it goes off. So what's the only piece that can move? The king. This is a zugzwang position. On a move like king c5, just bishop to b7. Okay? So there it is. Just remember the concept. You have to zugzwang this bishop. Okay, This was kind of a nice one. This is white to play and draw. You draw with rook takes d6 check. If bishop takes, we take with the rook, king moves, and now we just put the rook here on d3. And there's absolutely no way for them to get in. So on bishop takes, on rook takes check, there really is no other option for the king, because if he goes anywhere else, we simply, check. And then they're going to lose the queen, and they could even lose the game if they're not careful. As a matter of fact, they will, right? So that's not good. So here's the position. Rook takes, bishop takes, we take check, king e7. Just remember this little fortress, the pawn on the second rank guarding the rook, and you just do this all day long. Keep your king out of check. No worries. I have to save this. Look at that. Okay, number 20. Here we go. This is a nice one. Okay, here we were black. We're in check, and we're about to be down a rook because white is going to queen. So the key idea here was to play king to d3. And the reason you play king d3 is you'll notice that you have like a train track here, and you're going to have another one here once white queens. And then the idea is to play queen d2 check. After queen d2 check, if the king decides to come up to this square, we have this really nice check, and you'll have a perpetual. If you just want to take a look, this game will end in a perpetual check if he comes here. You just keep checking on this F file. So, and if he goes back, you just go back. So if I take this here, if the king eventually touches the back row, then you just play queen c1 check. Ouch. Give up your queen. Stalemate. I think it said, does it matter what square you put your king on? You have to keep the black king trapped in here. So did it matter if you put him here or here? It matters big time. The trick to remember is you always want your king to get checked. So the correct move for white is here. You want to get checked. So if the knight checks you on this square, you get to come here. The only piece that can move is this knight. So we come here, and now we put our king back on this square. Remember, we want to get checked. We move out of check. They play knight here. What do? Do you take the knight? Oh no, just king back. The game is a dead draw. Check, you come here. So that's a nice little hint. This knight could be way up here. It doesn't matter. You want to be checked. So move your king to a square that would allow the knight to check you. So if the knight's on a dark square, you move to a dark square. That's it. I guess we could say go to the same color as the knight. Okay, that was a very cool position. Okay, not too difficult here. White to play and make a draw. The answer is knight e4. Attack the pawn. They have no choice. If they leave it there, you take it. If they queen, you have a fork. Now you might say, Mike, come on, that's really easy. Yeah, I know, but you'd be surprised. Just know the concept. Sometimes a knight attacks something, you're actually attacking it if it's on this color or this color. Because if you attack it like in the game, you give it the option of sitting or moving. If it moves, you're getting it to attack it again because of the fork. That's a cool property that the knights have. All right, if there's a check involved, it can actually work on both colors. All right, you guys got that one? Here, black is threatening your knight, and if they take the knight, you'll have a winning game. The correct move in this position, and the only correct move, is king d5. You have to approach the pawn. If they take your knight, you simply play king c4, and it is a draw. Correct? Okay, let's back it up to here, and you tell me after king d5 what happens on king here. What do we do? Well, you can just simply move your king. You have a lot of things you could do. You can move your king here, here, and just kind of work your king in. Any move like king here, what can we do? Same idea, just king over, and you have a a drawn position. You might say no because of this move, but I don't know. You tell me. How about just check? And now there's no way to stop, white from making a draw here. If they play king here, I don't know, just check. And that's it. Once you get behind this pawn, you just walk your king forever and give up the knight for the pawn. Dead draw. Okay? King d5 was the right move. Okay, here white had an interesting draw. You give up your rook for the bishop. And the idea here is if the rook takes, then obviously when you take back with the bishop, this pawn is going to fall. It's a dead draw. But what if they queen? If they queen, you have to find the move rook c5 check, king b6, and then you simply take the queen. And this is a theoretically drawn position. If the king takes the rook, you should be able to hold this bishop against rook. Here's a little tip. Keep the king and bishop kind of working together. But if you have to go toward a corner, always go toward the corner opposite of the bishop. Put that in your notes, okay? White to play and win. We have a little check, king in the corner, and now the c rook. So we're threatening mate on this square. It's just a little mating that you had to find there. If they start giving things away, you take, and how about now? Do we take that rook? No, stalemate. Just checkmate them. Okay? So you just had to find, let's go back. This is the position to set up. It's a mating net. Give a check. King here. Rook c to b6. Game over. This is a nice one. You have to be careful. You can just take the rook, but then it's stalemate. So be careful with this stuff. So you give a check, king e8, and then find this nice move, king to d6. And now there's mating threats everywhere. That's it. Game's over. I'm not really sure what they can do because you're threatening to mate them. If they move the king out of the net, you just trade the rooks and win the game. Okay, so go back. Rook a7 is the winner. That's what it looked like at the beginning. Here, my friends, I believe you started from this position. This is something to work out on your own. It is a wonderful exercise of surrounding the king. To win this game, it's best to actually take a step back with your rook, giving black a chance to come forward. Obviously, they're not coming forward with the pawn. They can try a few things. If they play king d5, just remember this little trick of taking opposition from the back. And if a move like king c5, then you just start walking your king the other way, like king to e6. And at some point, they're going to have to connect the king and the pawn. And when they do, for example, say king c4, then we just get on the pawn with the king. The only way not to lose it is to come here. You guys see that? And then you put your king here. That's all. So let's go back. If you play a move like, I don't know, you could do a lot of things. Let's say you play rook to d3 here. Let's take a look to see if that matters. What if I just play king e4 and hit your rook right away? Now if you stay on the same line that you were on, the pawn just marches down and you'll see that your king is too far away. You guys see that, right? And king here, and we have a draw. So you just had to find this move, rook to d1, and then walk your king around to either side, and you'll have a win. Okay, white to play and win. Rook f1, give a check. And you have to be a little careful here. If king to g2, just put the rook all the way on the back. And what you will do is you'll eventually force this king back onto the g file. And that little maneuver gave you a tempo, actually. And now you just walk your king down. If they play king g2, we play king f3. What do they do? King f1, and now the really cool rook a8. You guys see the problem? Yep. What to do here? If you queen, you get mated. If you make a knight, you have a draw here, believe it or not. Really cool position. I think in the blog I said there may have been a chance for you to win this position, but over there you have if you get the knight here, you would have a draw. Yeah, you don't want to play king to f3 here. That's right. I messed you up there a little bit. One way to win is you put the rook behind the pawn again, and then you're going to queen as soon as it comes. You're going to take it as soon as they try to queen. So you know what to do. If they play king h2, you simply come here. If they come here, I've seen this before. Don't take the pawn. You just checkmate them on h8. And I've seen that before, so just be careful. Okay, so there was the winning idea there. Okay, almost similar to that other study that we were doing. Here, in order to win, you take the rook as far to the right as possible, and on king f2, you check, forcing the king to protect the pawn. I'll just show you one line. Again, you guys can play around with this as much as you like. If king e3, for example, just rook h1, and what you want to have is a position like this, king d2, where the king anchors both pawns, and then you'll have an easy win here. If they come to bother you, I don't know, you guys tell me, I think everything wins, just like rook here, because you're ready to take this pawn with check, if need be. And if they come here, just be careful what to do. You know, pause your video and see if you can figure this out. How do you win? Well, you just take this pawn, and there's nothing they can do. If here, you know, you have almost anything wins, just here. And the moment they hit your rook, you just protect it, and the game is finished. Oh, 3 pawns against a rook. And again, my friends, you should have answered yes, that 3 pawns can beat the rook. Not going through every variation. I'll just show you one. d6 check. If the rook takes, you simply queen the pawn. King takes, king over, squeeze. Okay? d6 check. If king b8, then d7. Rook h5 check. King b6. Oops, not good. Game's over. If they come here, you can do a few things. You know, oh, how about checkmate? I guess that's good. Anyway, hopefully you got the idea. Okay, the knight against the king and the bishop here. Oh boy, there are so many different ways to do this. I think the version that I gave you was knight e6. And what I'll walk you through is one way of many. So black's move is obviously forced. You want to learn this little W technique where the knight kind of makes this, you're going to see it, it's going to look like a W. So here, with a lot of different things to do, we're going to play the move knight to d8. And what knight d8 does is, it depends where the king goes. Let's say he comes here, right? Then you give this check. He has to come here. Then we can waste the tempo. He has to come here, and then we simply put the bishop here, forcing the king here. And there's a whole technique of how to keep pushing this king over to the side, and it's called this W maneuver with the knight. I'm going to show it to you. Okay, here we're actually going to start using that W, and I'm doing this actually off the top of my head. I know how to do this, and I hope I don't mess this up because I'm on. There's that little W technique, knight e5. King f8 is making our life easy. The more challenging move is when the king starts to run out this way. So we chase him with our king until he gets to the point where you think he's coming out on this dark square. Don't worry about the light square. We play knight d7. So you guys see that W technique I'm talking about with the knight? So after the knight goes to d7, there are so many options. You can just play around with this stuff. So king here, and he wants to get out. You see? So how do you prevent him from getting out? You cannot let him get out because you're going to mate him in the same color corner of your bishop. So we play the move bishop to d3. Say king c7. And now bishop to b5. And you have these 3 squares covered. You have the knight covered. They can try a lot of things after bishop to b5. You have to play around with this. If like king to b7, you just walk your king over. King to d6. If king to c8, You can play here. Oh boy, that's a good question. Maybe just bishop here, bishop to c6, because now on king to d8, we just simply play knight to c5. King comes over, and we don't want to let this king running back this way anymore, so we have to checkmate from here. One little trick is this little check, which is a cool way because if he decides to come to this square, we mate him in one move. So let's back up. He's not going to do that. So on the check, what is he going to do? He's going to play here. We play here. He can try to come out. We make a move with our king. King up. King here. King here. Now, all we have to do is flip this bishop to this square, and the game is over. So we take a tempo, and there could be faster ways to do it. This is one of the ways that I know how to do it. Bishop here, king here, king here, king here. Now get your knight to this square without giving stalemate. Here, 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 mate in two. Okay? Can be a little complicated, I know. What did you learn? The main thing is that W technique. Yeah, this was not hard. It was black to play without just a little endgame technique for tournaments. I think this was from a real game. White pulled away. I think it was an internet game. And we simply queen the pawn, sorry. Force white to give up the bishop. And then sometimes you have trouble with these corner squares, right? With the bishops of the wrong color and the pawns. Simplest way to win is force the king into the corner and then give up your bishop for this pawn. And you'll have a position with two extra pawns. So pull the bishop back, king over, bishop to d5, king a1, take it, simply king c2, king a1, and give him a pawn. Game over. Take, push, push, game over. Okay, I actually lost this game as white. Let me flip it, in Norwalk about a month ago, and it's a draw. And in time pressure, you know, it's not so easy to draw these things. But in this position, if we just tempo the king so that he can't advance and just force them to move the pawn, eventually you'll get a position where the king and pawn are tied together like this. And then the way to draw this is just go to the back rank. So you can see that that stops the king from coming up because of checkmate. So the best try they have is to check you, and then you just play king to c4. So if the rook checks, the king takes the pawn. The king's not going anywhere. If they play a move like b2, you just put your king right in between. And this is a dead draw. There's no way that black can make progress. After king to c4, I'm not really sure what else they can try. They can play a move like rook to b2, and then we can just check. And then king to b6, we just check again. And if allowed, we're going to take this pawn, and they're probably not going to allow it. We can just continue with the checks, and the game is a draw. So I was a little upset that I didn't know this, but I didn't know it. So rook takes pawn is a dead draw. Okay, guys? All right, so take a look at it again from the beginning. Just remember, double G pawns like this, very hard to win. This is the famous Philidor defense. White to play, rook h3, dead draw. I'm not saying anything else. By now you should know what the Philidor defense is. You guys got it. All right, let's load another one. This is the Lucena position. I'm not going through the whole thing. You give a check. King h6. You can try to make a bridge. You guys remember this stuff? That's all I'm giving you. By now, you should all know how to win the Lucena position. Here, say black queens. You're white. What should the result be? I'm giving you no more. Dead draw. Rook pawn. Can't get in there. Number 37 was kind of cool. White to play and win. You just walk that king up there, and black's going to try to follow you. But the problem is, when you grab the knight, You have just enough time to get out. The question then would be, what if it were black's move here? Would you be able to draw this position? If you played like knight to c7 and king f4, let's say, then king f2, king e4, king e2, king d4. And the question is, can white win this game? Good question. Yeah, that didn't look so good. How about king to g3? I think this is a better try. King f3. Are we going to be able to get him now? Probably not, right? King to b7, king to d6. King takes. Aha, we got there just in time. All right? The main one here, though, is the first move if it's white to play. Just king d5. You just spread up that diagonal, grab the knight, and queen the pawn. Last one of the year. Not hard at all. It's a simple checkmate. You just have to find that you move the knight and let your opponent queen. All right, my friends, it's a long video. Don't do it in one shot, but at least you have the answers to everything that we did. You guys are the best.